Working Cows Podcast, Episode 22.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
This episode has been brought to you in part by Kamak Ranch Supply. Check out their website at kamakranchsupply.com. This episode is also brought to you by chriswilliamsaudio.com. Head on over to chriswilliamsaudio.com for all your audio production needs. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Cody McDaniel. Cody is a producer from Montana who is a cooperative producer for Faro Cattle Company. Faro Cattle Company cooperative producers are producers who have philosophies, genetics, and breeding programs very similar to that of Faro Cattle Company. And Cody has been a member of the cooperative producer program for a number of years. I connected with Cody through Twitter. I will put a link to his Twitter handle in the show notes page and would highly recommend that you go out and follow him as well. So it is a pleasure to have Cody McDaniel on the Working Cows podcast. Cody, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast. I'd like to just give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, to share a little bit about what you're doing and how it is you came to be doing that.
Thank you, Clay. My name is Cody McDaniel, and I am a Montana transplant from northwest Kansas. I've been here since the fall of 2015. I was a fifth-generation farmer to worked the same quarter of land near Goodland, Kansas, and I had the opportunity to move here into Montana in the fall of 2015. And given that opportunity, I just could not give up that chance. Our ranch is located in southwest Montana, rolling bluffs between the Big Belt Mountains and Canyon Ferry Lake. The Canyon Ferry Lake is the first dam on the Missouri River. We're about 50 miles north of where the Missouri River forms, and average rainfall here is anywhere from 10.5 to 11 inches. Elevation is 3,800 to 4,100 feet, and pretty semi-arid environment. And I raise registered Red Angus and registered Black Angus, married, and have 2 kids. We've got, along with the cows, we've got horses, goats, chickens, and 2 other animals that the kids have for 4-H. The kids and the wife are very involved on the ranch, so that is really nice to have that. I've been a CP, which stands for Cooperative Producer for Faro Cattle Company, for going on 16 years now. A cooperative producer is basically someone that raises bulls for Faro Cattle Company. There's 12 states that are involved with CPs, and we all have the same philosophies, pretty much the same genetics, and the same breeding programs. Having the different states, we're able to raise the livestock in different environments, and therefore we have different cells in these environments. We have 3 spring cells: a Texas cell, a Missouri cell, and a Colorado cell. And then in the fall, we have 2 cells, a Colorado cell and a Nebraska cell. And last time I checked, we were, I think, in the top 10 for seed stock providers in the U.S. We're selling around 900 bulls, again, in 5 states. And for me personally, being involved in Faro Cattle Company is just, it's been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my ranching, family, friendship, and just pretty much everything. It was late 90s when I was just getting into the cattle business, and I was buying some registered, well, I guess at that time they weren't registered, but they were commercial Red Angus cows. And I bought a set that were supposed to be, quote unquote, bred to Cavanese bulls. And when they started having calves, I was having 110, 120. I even had a 130-pound calf out of these cows. And it was just so frustrating every time I'd get ready to see a heifer having a calf, I was just, I just wanted to quit. I'm like, this is just ridiculous. And so that got me to looking around, and, there's got to be an easier way to ranch than this. And so I bought some bred heifers that were bred to a bull called Colorado Hobo. And at this time, late, early 2000s, this bull Colorado Hobo that Kit Farrell had purchased, he was wanting to get some calves on the ground and kind of prove the bull. So throughout some conversation, he asked me if I would be a CP, and I said yes. And I guess the rest you could say is history. But with the Farrell genetics and our philosophies, ranching is fun. It's more profitable for me. My heifers calve out with the cows. I can't even remember the last time I had any problems calving heifers or having any pulling issues or any mispresentations. It just doesn't happen. I calve in May, June, so I'm breeding in early August. AI and natural breeding of cows. I've done most of the sync programs, and last year I finally went to AI school. I usually have hired it out. My wife had done some AI breeding, and to save the marriage, so to speak, she just did not enjoy AI and cows for some reason, which, it's not the most luxurious job in the world. But anyways, I went to school last spring, and so I did my own AI in the summer, which I should have done that 15 years ago, because I actually enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to the summer of the AI. And so I do a lot of AIing, and my heifers program is I give all the heifers a chance to get bred. The only thing that really gets cold pre-breeding is, a disposition issue here and there, or a dink, which both of them are pretty small percentage-wise. And so they get bred with the cows. And what I've done with the heifers before I moved to Montana in Kansas for a couple of years, I got to looking at my book work, and I was noticing these 3-year-olds that fall out of the program, and that's usually the hardest time for them. They're still growing, and they're trying to raise a calf at the same time, and that's the hardest time to get them bred back. And I got to looking at the paper and seeing that most of those that were falling out were heifers that were calving in the second or third breeding. And so, it got me to thinking, well, why don't I just, cut this early on? And so what I did for a couple of years, I exposed the heifers for 30 days or less with a bull or two, and I ended up having about 70% get bred, and the remaining 20% got bred for fall calving, and then there was, maybe 5% or so that just weren't infertile. They were just infertile, I guess. So, that worked really well, and I haven't done it in Montana yet. I'm just kind of waiting for my cows to kind of get adapted to the environment. I think I'm going to do that again this year. It worked really well. Those cows those 70% that did make it, majority of them are still in the herd. So that was kind of an eye-opener there that, the fertility, as my good friend David Hall says, fertility drives the bus, and that's the name of the game with this business here. And so it worked good. Those heifers that got bred in the fall, I sold them later on in the year, worked good for cash flow reasons. And then it also kind of worked good for drought management. When I had so much pasture, and with the heifers, I was able to, keep 70%, and then I was able to move some on through selling in the fall or selling some of the opens, and I wasn't building huge numbers up, but I was building numbers with cows that were fertile, and so that was really important. Most of my cows are averaging probably around 1,100 to 1,200 pound cows. Anywhere, I got bigger cows and I got smaller cows. Their brave scores probably anywhere from 2 to 5. Most of them are averaging that 3.5 to 4 frame range probably. But when I go back to calving, part of our program is, we got to have good records. And so what I do at calving is I tag and weigh the calf, and then look at the cow, and then I give a body condition score. I look at that or conformation. And we also give maternal and disposition scores, which maternal and disposition are kind of the same, but kind of not. I want a protective cow, but I don't want a cow that's going to run me over and try to kill me. Everybody's tolerance to that is different. I've had guys that trying to tag a calf that, I think a cow can kind of read the emotions and read the person trying to tag the calf, and some just can't handle the pressure from the cow. But, you don't want a cow that's going to run anybody over. And just the same, you don't want a cow that's going to run off, which almost makes me more mad than a cow that's going to be trying to kill me. So once I calve, I'm usually doing that on cool season dry land. The ranch here that we got now is everything that could be farmed. If he could get a tractor to it, he pretty much farmed it. So, and it was put back into CRP back in the day. Most of it consists of crested wheat, a little bit of western wheat, and it all seems to come on at the same time. And that's, late March, mostly April through July. So it's where I do most of my grazing in the summertime. And then about August, I've got irrigated pasture that I moved to. And from there, I do more of my intensive grazing on my irrigated pasture. I need to get set up on my dry land. I need water points. It's just something that's going to come with time. So I can do some more intensive grazing and get my dry land into shape. But I've done quite a bit of pivot irrigation and done a lot of irrigated grass. So I'm pretty familiar with that and done a lot of intensive grazing there. And usually on that till August, till the end of the year, that irrigated pasture's got meadow brome grass, orchard grass, tall fescue, perennial ryegrass, and then I got white clover and some bird's foot trefoil in that. The cows do good on that. And then wintertime comes, and I'm still working on trying to figure that out. It's when I moved up here the first winter, there was about 500 elk on the property, and last year there was about 300. And the first year I tried swath grazing and the elk, it was doing just fine. I was moving cows every 2 or 3 days, and it was just going just fine. And then about 500 elk showed up, walking through fences, walking through my windrows, and once that happened, the cows were going through fences. It was just a wreck. And I'm just guessing that I lost probably 30 days of grazing, thanks to the elk and not being able to rotate onto the windrows. And once the elk messed the windrows up, it kind of, as long as the windrows are nice and laying good, it's still nice and green and has its quality. And then the elk and the cattle, once they got out, just kind of ruined that. Last year was kind of the same scenario. Through the Montana Wildlife Department, we are able to do management hunts, and the first year we started in January, I believe, and we were able to, I think we ended up killing 29 elk in 21 days. And the elk finally got tired of getting bothered, and they moved. Same type scenario last year, only took 14 days. And then this year, they did not show up until I got back from Mexico here this weekend, and I probably got anywhere from 300 to 400 elk again that have showed up. So my winter grazing right now is a work in progress. I would do some things probably differently if the elk weren't here. I'm not a huge fan of feeding cows. It's probably one of my least favorite things to do. Right now, before I left Mexico, I was unrolling hay and probably giving the cows 3 to 4 days worth of grazing. And I was unrolling it with the bale unroller, my round bales, and was pretty much what looked to me like swath grazing. But I was able to do it in parts of my irrigated pasture on ground, on hills that were poor producing the last couple of years. And so by doing that, I'm building organic matter and really thinking that I'm gonna do a lot of good on that. So I'm basically intensively grazing these windrows in the wintertime, and I'm able to do it in spots that I want. Granted, I'm burning diesel, and it's taking time and wear and tear on machinery. I get all that, but, and I was going to keep doing that, but anytime I'm going to throw hay out, the 300-400 elk are going to enjoy that as well. So it's just one of the things I guess I'm a learning curve with the elk and management around here, but I believe, my cows could graze through plenty of snow. If I was able to do windrow grazing like I really wanted to, I've seen cows get the water. They can go through several inches of snow or feet to get the forage that they need. My cows have adapted well from Kansas to Montana. There's been really not any loss there as far as a condition or a fallout rate. So I think that's just, moving cattle from there to here was not a problem at all. And then in the fall, I bring the calves in and most of the time do a fence line weaning. And I do that with, usually it only takes 2 or 3 hot wires to do fence line weaning. It seems to be about as good as any and easy on the calves and the cows. They get to see the calf, they get to sniff, they get to lay next to it, and that's generally has been a really good way to wean.
Very good. There's a lot there, and I appreciate that. Very interesting things that come to my mind. I'd like to come back on the other side of a break. We'll take a quick break and thank our sponsors, and then we will come back and I'll ask some follow-up questions here on some of the stuff that Cody has just shared with us. So we'll be right back with Cody McDaniel on the Working Cows Podcast. A new sponsor here on the Working Cows Podcast, the High Plains Ranch Practicum. It is an invaluable resource. I cannot stress highly enough how much I think it is important for producers to be involved in continuing education programs. So go check out the High Plains Ranch Practicum at hpranchpracticum.com and register. The class that I was a part of sold out before the deadline, and so the deadline is the end of May. But go ahead and register early and make plans to be a part of this. Just a great format for continuing education for ranchers. hpranchpracticum.com, our newest sponsor on the Working Cows Podcast. We are back with Cody McDaniel, who, as he has said earlier, is a cooperative producer with the Faro Cattle Company. And he is up in Montana dealing with limited rainfall, but able to, through some well-adapted cattle, able to graze in some challenging circumstances. And you said you're grazing most, if not all, the year. Is that right?
I'm grazing up till January, February, and March, maybe early, middle March. I am haying. It goes back to the elk. I don't know if that's a great excuse or what, but for right now, like I said, the elk are a learning curve on how I'm having to deal with them, and so right now I am rolling out hay, and the cows, I'd rather feed my cows than the elk, I guess. So the windrow grazing worked great, and I would be able to do that. I know I'd be able to do it all year round, but feeding 300 to 400, 500 elk is kind of a pain.
You mentioned also, first of all, I guess you mentioned a move from Kansas to Montana, and you said that move went well. You were a cooperative producer before you came to Montana. What was the motivation for the move from Kansas to Montana?
Well, the motivation was, opportunity. It was, I was, like I said, I was 5th generation farmer. It's born, bred, blood, everything in Kansas, plains, mountains and water and trees are not in my DNA. And to move up here was a pretty big change and a challenge. I was open to the challenge and excited. My wife's family was from up here, so that was kind of a help to move up here. We, went up here and visited for years and years. And I said, there's just no way I'm going to move up here. Kansas is my home, and that's kind of where I'm at and what I'm used to. And had an opportunity to fly up here in summer of 2014 to look at a ranch. And it was kind of a work in progress ranch. First time I seen it, I was like, this is just too much. I woke up the next morning and I thought to myself, well, this is the worst that this ranch will ever be. I can only improve on this. Grazing management, the cattle, etc. And so, it was an opportunity, and also, just enjoying life in general. We are a mile and a half from within 5 minutes, I can be down at the lake. In the summertime, we can be paddleboarding on the lake. We can be fishing in the summertime. 15, 20 minutes, we can be in the mountains, hiking. Wintertime, we can be ice fishing. Helena's a neat little town that we're about 45 minutes from. So, to raise cattle by the numbers and strictly business model-wise, Kansas probably going to beat Montana. It's, with all the unfair, but each environment has its unfair advantages.
Sure.
Kansas, I was grazing corn stalks in the wintertime, cheap. And then here our unfair advantage is the cattle and my calves seem to be gaining a little bit better and they look a little bit better. So, each environment has its unfair advantages. We have most of the time have generally cool summers. And so I guess my move was a lot of reasons. It was opportunity mostly and to have and to enjoy life a little more than what I was in Kansas.
I think one of those maxims of real estate is to buy the least valuable house in the best neighborhood. And it sounds like you found a ranch that you could improve with some different management techniques. And really, in a lot of cases, I think ranches, that is what it comes down to, is management. And that's where the opportunity lies to either yourself change your management style and essentially, according to some people, gain another ranch by grazing a little bit differently, or I guess maybe a lot differently. But, you also mentioned before the break a trip to Mexico. What were some of the things that you saw going on in Mexico as far as how ranching is different and how it's similar? What were some of the things you saw going on down there?
Yeah, the Mexico trip was very interesting. One of the gentlemen down there, I believe his name was Marco, said that, if Montana and Arizona had a baby, they'd have this part of Mexico. And because I kept saying, I was like, this is, very similar to my environment. It's rocky, semi-arid environment. I think they get a little more rain than we do here. But, driving from ranch to ranch and from Chihuahua, Mexico, you'd see just kind of the same thing you see here. You'd see poorly managed grass. And when we got to some ranches that had been, particularly one that was holistically grazed for the last 6 or 7 years, they had before and after pictures. And it's so amazing and so inspirational to see something like that. The grass was growing in spots that it hadn't been growing in. Through his intensive grazing, they were getting rid of the invasive species cactuses and that they didn't want, and they were gaining the grass that they wanted through the grazing. They were moving their cattle every 3 or 4 days. Kind of depends on the time of the year. When the grass was growing during the rainy season, they were moving quicker. In drier times of the year, they would move slow. The cattle look so much better when there's holistically grazed like that. And it was just really neat to see the effects of that type of grazing and that type of management on the ground. You manage for what you want. And, they wanted grass. They were capturing the solar energy, turning that into grass, turning that into beef. And it was just really, really neat to see.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I know I saw a picture somewhere on Twitter. I think I follow you on Twitter. Your Twitter handle is _Cody McDaniel, and a link to that will be in the show notes page for this episode. You can check it out at workingcows.net/22. workingcows.net/22 will be the show notes page for this episode. There will be links to some of the different things that we're talking about here today. I don't know if it was on your Twitter profile. I don't see it as I was just looking for it now, but there was a picture of two clumps of grass side by side, and one of them was gray and kind of degraded, and the other one had a little bit more life to it, it appeared, and I think that was from that trip, correct?
Yeah, I don't know if that doesn't sound like one that I posted, but could have been. I don't think it was.
Yeah, I didn't see it on your timeline, but I know I did see it somewhere.
Yeah, the grass is there. They were through their grazing, they were starting to see grasses that normally weren't there. I mean, they were there a long time ago, but through steady grazing and just standard grazing, some of these grasses were just disappearing, and cactuses, cat claw, all these invasive species were moving in. And through their grazing practices, the grasses were coming back, and it was, seeing those types of differences was really great to see. And, and going back to, to this ranch, and another reason you talked about, the opportunity, and I thought, well, this ranch can only improve, and I just get so excited at thinking about the things that I can do here. I've got electric fence up pretty much all around the ranch. I think a lot of people around here kind of look at me going, what is that? This is barbed wire fence country. And so I've had several people asking me, tips on electric fencing and that sort of thing. That's what I'm used to. I don't like barbed wire fence. I like electric fence. And so the things that they're doing down there in Chihuahua, I've seen it done in Colorado. I've seen it done in Nebraska, Texas, Missouri. All these different environments are able to do this through grazing management and adaptable cattle. And I've only been up here a couple of years, but I'm super excited on what this place can do. I've got some ideas, and it's going to take some time, and excited for the future.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mentioned to you before we started recording that we had Fernando Falomir, who is a Chihuahuan Desert region rancher, on Working Cows podcast, episode 8, workingcows.net/8, if you're interested in that and going back. And he said the same things, that this stuff, speaking of holistic management, works everywhere it's tried. And that's kind of what you just outlined there. I'd like to turn, just as we kind of wind things down, I'd like to turn back to the elk issue. Have you talked to other people who have dealt with the elk and about some of the ways they have dealt with them? I mean, to me, what I see people doing with wildlife a lot of times is just turning that into another income stream, namely being a hunting enterprise. Is that an opportunity, or is that the best way to manage that risk, or is there something else that you've got in mind?
Well, the problem with my valley is the elk don't move down here till usually the last 10 days, 2 weeks of hunting season. And this year, like I said, they didn't show up till last week. Hunting season was done end of November. So I wish there was a way I could make money off of it. But they're just costing me money right now. And, it seems like we're about 5 miles from the mountains, and they usually kind of hang out in the mountains or the foothills until, like I said, about the last 10 days or so of hunting season. And through management hunts, they've managed to stay out till here, middle of February. So as of now, that it doesn't seem like something, but yeah, I know I'm anything I can do. I've talked to Jim Garish, and I've got some electric fence posts. They're G2, they're plastic hollow posts that I've used around the ranch. When the elk run through them, or the deer run through them, or the antelope, they have some bend, so they have some give to them. That enabled me to put a single wire hot fence around most of the ranch. I've considered fencing around the pivots or fencing around something in the wintertime for winter grazing. That, it sounds like a lot of money, but if I could extend my grazing season 30 days, 60 days, it might be worth it. I just don't know how a herd of 200 to 300 or 400 elk, if they ever get pushed or pressured running down, is going to how they're going to deal with that. It's so yeah, I'm open ears, and I'm definitely looking for ways to manage them and work around them.
Well, Cody, I appreciate your time today. We're kind of coming up to about the amount of time I told you we would spend together. I appreciate your perspective and sharing some about your operation and what you see going on, or what you've seen going on in different regions, and the fact that what you are doing will work pretty much anywhere it's tried. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you and say, "Hey, Cody, I got an idea for your elk," how would they best go about doing that?
Well, I've got find me on Twitter, _Cody McDaniel. I am on Facebook, and also through Faro Cattle Company's website, you'd be able to find my number there, an email there, and believe that we had a website that still a work in progress there. But yeah, those 3 places are a good way to get a hold of me.
Sure. And links to all that, as I said, will be at workingcows.net/22. Cody, thanks for your time today. Is there any resources or anything that you would like to be on that show notes page, or anything else you'd like to share with people?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for having me on. On my trip to Chihuahua, I was able to listen to majority of your podcast, and that was they were really good. And I listened to, I believe it was Roland Cruz, or he's out of Bozeman.
Yeah, Roland Cruz.
And so, I'm anxious to give him a holler, and just enjoyed listening to all your podcasts. And, I guess, check out Faro Cattle Company's website, and there's some good resources, books. One of my mentors also is Chip Hines. He's got 3 or 4 books that are just really, really good, no-nonsense books about raising cattle and adaptive environments and so on. So I would definitely look there.
Sure. Yep. I will link to all of Chip's books are linked at the resources page at workingcows.net/resources, but I'll throw them in the workingcows.net/22 show notes page for this episode. So, Cody, thank you for your time. Thank you for your kind words. My whole goal with the Working Cows podcast is to find people smarter than me, which isn't hard, and then ask them questions. And so that's all I'm doing. So a little inside secret there as to how I'm doing what I'm doing. But thank you for your time, and thanks for your kind words.
Thank you.
This episode has been brought to you by Kamak Ranch Supply. Check out their website at kamakranchsupply.com. Here's the deal about Kamak Ranch Supply. When you call and ask them about a product, there's no blank pause on the other end of the line because they don't understand the product that you just asked them about. If they are selling it, they understand it because they are producers, and Gary Kamak himself, the owner of Kamak Ranch Supply, is a producer. So if you want answers about the products you're calling to ask about from producers, call Kamak Ranch Supply or check out their website at kamakranchsupply.com. This episode is also brought to you by chriswilliamsaudio.com. For the last 11 years or so, I've been talking for a living. I've gained some skills in talking. I can form a sentence, I can think on my feet, I can respond to questions, I can come up with new questions. All that time developing my speaking craft has not left me a lot of time to figure out how to make audio sound great. If you're a musician, podcaster, or filmmaker, making your product sound great is crucial. So you stick to what you know, and let Chris Williams stick to what he knows, making your product sound great. Head on over to chriswilliamsaudio.com for all your podcasting, music production, and film audio needs. I would also recommend that you stop in and check out farocattle.com, and you can go to workingcows.net/22, and there will be links to Faro Cattle Company, specifically their spring bull sales, which are coming up. They have bull sales in Missouri, Colorado, and Texas. Their Texas Spring Bull Sale is on April 2nd. Their Missouri Spring Bull Sale is on April 5th. And their Colorado Spring Bull Sale is on April 16th. All of those sales will be streamed on the internet. And so there will be links to all those things at workingcows.net/22.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.